Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Machado-Casas. Hola, ¿cómo están? Soy la doctora Machado-Casas. Unfortunately, I'm not there to meet all of you today, but I'm here virtually to share a little bit with you about what we do with La Clase Magica Familia, La Clase Magica Family Group. That meets at the same time that the La Clase Magica children and the UTSA compañeros students meet. What we do is once a month, we bring the families together of the children that are part of La Clase Magica to what we call talleres, which is kind of like a workshop to discuss technology, to talk about the different types of things the kids are doing in school through La Clase Magica, but also for them to get more familiar with technology and begin to see technology as a tool for everyday life. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we got this started. We were part, as you've been hearing throughout the day, we started La Clase Magica. And when we started, we noticed that the parents began to tell us right after, La Clase Magica meetings, which I was the first professor who ran La Clase Magica with Dr. Mari Cortez. And they would come up to me and tell me, this is really great. I'm so happy that my children are learning how to use technology, but I would really like to learn technology myself because I feel like we feel we're being left behind. And these kids pick up, the phone, they're able to do all these things that we still can't manage yet. So there became the idea of starting a La Clase Magica Familia. And what we did is we simply sent out a flyer to the children, the families and their children, in telling them that we were going to begin to have these classes. We called the meeting, and we had probably about 40 people who attended the meeting. And we talked about, some of the things that they wanted to know in terms of technology. They had a lot of questions about the types of technologies that the kids were actually doing in the classroom. Because as you know, when the kids come to the home, mom and dad would say, ¿Cómo estás, mijito? ¿Cómo te fue? ¿Qué aprendiste? ¿Cómo te fue en la clase mágica? And they're just going to say, fine. Nothing, or, oh, I learned this, but, they don't really go into detail. So we began, the parents had a lot of questions about that. And then after that meeting, we kind of took a vote and made a decision together collectively that we were going to start La Clase Magica Familia group. So we began by that time. During that time, we only had the iPhones, and I believe it was the iPhone 3. So we had, as you know, our families are not oftentimes we're not just traditional families where a mom and a dad are in the home, but sometimes you had the tias and the abuelos and the cousins, right, the uncles and the cousins and the grandparents who are also raising the child, and we're much more communal. So, I opened it to everyone and anyone who was involved with the child at that time. And so we were very fortunate to have a set of grandparents. The oldest grandfather was in his 80s, late 80s when he started. And we had about 25 parents at the beginning of La Clase Magica Familia, and we started with the iPhones. And I remember the very first time that we had the meeting, passing out the iPhones and people not even wanting to touch the phones, just kind of, keeping very much away from them because they were so afraid they were going to break it. And this was just so new. So it took a lot, it's kind of like a way for me to figure out, okay, so how much do they know? Where do we need to go? And that's how we started. So every meeting, I pretty much talked about, what an iPhone was, the types of things that you can do. And as we continue to go through La Clase Magica, what they wanted to learn about was not only what the kids were doing at home with the La Clase Magica with the iPhone, but also other things. So they would ask me, for example, how much is an iPhone? Where can I get one? What other things can I do with this? And then we began talking about other things that kind of just organically came into the conversation, which, for example, I would like to send money home, or I would like to call my family at home. So we began talking about other things that they could do with technology to help them at home. I remember vividly one of the parents telling me how much money he was spending in his cell phone bill calling Mexico every single week, and he said that it was an average of about $250 a month aside from his regular cell phone bill just to call Mexico. And so, out of that idea came the idea of downloading Skype, of looking at other ways in which they can, call their homeland without having to spend so much money. So that's how we started. And then from there, once we got everybody kind of like in the same level technologically of how do you use this, what are the types of things that you do, how do you open an application, how do you close an application, and on top of all of that was, in order for you to actually be able to open and download an application, you have to have an email account. Most of the family's parents did not have an email account, so we set up email accounts for all of them. Really, it's been a lot that we kind of covered throughout all these years. And so then after we got all that taken care of, we then hooked up to, which you're going to be hearing a lot about, it's the Moodle, and we have a section there, La Clase Magica Familia, and they were able to hook up with that. And, one of the semesters, the parents, for example, were emailing the kids, through the Moodle, and that was really great for that one semester that they were able to email back and forth using the Moodle. And then we continued, and we began talking about different types of things that they could do, not just with La Clase Magica in the classroom, but also at home. So then we moved on to, the iPhone 3, then the iPhone 4, then the iPods, then the iPod Touches, and then, now the iPads. And now we have the iPad minis. So we've been kind of evolving with the technology. The great thing about all this Apple technology is that it stays pretty basic. The primary things you have to do with it, still stay the same. There are some things that are like cooler, or, the cameras are better and things like that. Then we've also worked with different types of applications. One application is Doodle, another application, StoryKit, for example. StoryKit is one application that they used a lot, which they could actually create stories, make stories, record them, take pictures of them, video them, and create a book. And that book they're able to email to any family member, including themselves. We also did bedtime stories. We did Skype. We did iMovie. We took regular books that you have in the library in Spanish, and we had the parents read them and put in their own little spin, just like if they were reading to their children, so that, let's say that, mom has to work at night, dad has to work at night, the uncle or whoever is at home that's putting the child to sleep could play that story for them in the voice of the mom, or the voice of the dad or the grandparent that was there. We also created different movies to talk about different kinds of things. One of them was, for example, about their own experiences in La Clase Magica. We also went into the kids' classrooms, and we had a couple of times where we shared together. We talked about language and literacy and the different levels of language and literacy, because as you know, when technology is another way of being literate. And so it was just kind of a very organic way for us to say, okay, these are some activities that you can use at home with your child. How can you use these activities at home with your child? And then we would have discussions about this. We did all kinds of other things. Another one that I can think about was we did Google, what is that called? Google, when you actually go into Google and you can see a particular town. Let's say I'm from Bluefields, Nicaragua, so I was able to go in and see that town in Bluefields, Nicaragua. What is it called? Huh? No, what is it called? Google Maps? Is it Google Maps? No. Google Earth. Yes, Google Earth. So we were able to use Google Earth, and that was really fascinating. That one time we were doing that, because for some of these parents, they're not able to go back to their hometowns. So being able to type in, I don't know, Puebla, Mexico, or San Paulito, Puebla, Mexico, and actually go in and narrow into that particular town to look at the streets, to look at the buildings around there. That was really fascinating for them. I think that was one of my favorite meetings that we had of La Clase Magica parents, because they were able to say, oh my goodness, and this is where I used to go to school, and this is where I used to go shopping, and look at all the other buildings now there. And I know that that's something that the families now are using at home. The other component that we have of La Clase Magica is La Clase Magica Familia at home. And what that is that the families who want to be part of, this study or continue La Clase Mágica and what they're learning in the school at home, they just agreed to it. And what we did is that we gave them an iPod or two, depending on the amount of children they had. And they were able to take that home. And I would go into their homes, and I still do that, and show them how to download applications, how to hook up to their wireless network if they had wireless network. Some of them went ahead and got wireless network because, it is expensive for a lot of our families. Others I met, for example, at McDonald's or at the library where you have free Wi-Fi, and I showed them how to do that because, for example, the computers were always taken, or there were not enough, computers for all the children in the family. So I met some families in the library, other families at McDonald's and different places to be able to hook them up with the use of the iPod. But on top of that, we downloaded a series of games and educational games based on the age of the children that they had at home. So some had preschool age children, some had K through 5, some had middle school. And so, the mom would say, I want this child these two kids who one's in high school, one's in middle school, to be able to use this iPod. And so we downloaded games based on what they were doing. So geometry or, pre-algebra, et cetera, et cetera. But then the little ones, we downloaded based also on what they were doing at home. And it's really been a wonderful experience for me, and I think also for the families, which you're going to hear from one of the parents later on today. Having those tools at home, because not only are first we connected the children, the UTSA students, with the families through the use of technology, but also now we're taking it to the home so that, it doesn't stop it. It doesn't become something that, you go home and it stops there. It continues at home. And what's been fascinating with that is that now the parents come to the Clase Magica Familia at the school, and I don't have to spend a lot of time explaining to them how to do this, how to open, how to turn it on, how to do this, that, and the other, because there's something that they're familiar with. And they come to me with much more advanced type of questions, and they want to explore a little more. And they said, hey, is there an application to do X, Y, and Z? Or have you heard of this other application? One of the applications that they're using a lot is that's mostly to text abroad. It's WhatsApp, or for example, to call is Viber. And also they've been able to talk to families, their families at home, abroad. And as you know, for those of you who travel a lot, or those of you who have families abroad, anyone that you talk to has an iPhone. I mean, not an iPhone, but a phone. And a lot of times they're they're fairly advanced phones. And so they're able to text with family members as long as the family member is able to download, for example, WhatsApp or Viber. Viber, you can talk for free anywhere in the world. And so that's been really fascinating how they've been able to communicate with each other with the use of technology. And it's been a way to maintain the fluidity of language literacy and technology literacy with the children, the UTSA students, the family, and the family at home. So it's not disconnected, and they're all kind of buying together. So I hope that this is something that you all are interested in doing. I'm sure you have a lot of questions, but I thought it would be important for you to hear from at least one or two of the family members who are part of La Clase Mágica. So what's coming up next is a little, talk or a conversation with one of the Clase Mágica parents who's an amazing mother. And she will be able to talk to you about some of the things that she's learned and how she's using technology. Because I think for us, one thing is me talking about it, and another thing is hearing it from the people who are actually doing it. This is really not about any of the professors here. This is about the children and the families who are being affected, because now they will be the ones who will carry these on. And so, with that, I leave you. But if you have any questions for me, please email me at margarita.machado-casas@utsa.com, utsa.edu, not .com. And if someone can please write it down somewhere, I'm sure you can also find it in the information the Academy for Teacher Excellence is providing you with. But Next, what's coming up next is you will be hearing from the parent, one of the moms who's really active in La Clase Magica. And what we're doing next, so that was the model that we currently had at Las Palmas, and now what we're doing next is that we're going to be doing the train the trainers models. And so the parents who have been now actively involved with La Clase Magica will be the ones who will be leading the next couple of stages of La Clase Magica Familia, and the parent that you're going to be hearing from next will be one of those parents who's going to be actively involved in organizing, these technology talleres and in language and literacy talleres. So with that, I will leave you, and thank you very much, and I hope I can see you and meet you all soon. Thank you.